December 30th, 1962, San Bernardino, California. A fire truck screams down a quiet residential street. Neighbors stand on their lawns in bathrobes, watching smoke pour from a small house at the end of the block. Inside that house is a woman named Anna Hackman. She's 57 years old. She fell asleep with a lit cigarette in her hand. By the time the firefighters break down the door, it's already too late. 3,000 miles away, in a one-bedroom apartment in New York City, a phone rings. Gene Hackman is 32 years old. He's been in New York for 6 years, struggling to make it as an actor. He's worked as a doorman, a furniture mover, a soda jerk. He's been told he has no talent. He's been voted least likely to succeed. He has exactly one film credit to his name, a small role in a forgotten movie called Mad Dog Call. He picks up the phone. The voice on the other end belongs to his brother, Richard. "Gene, it's Mom." Gene's hand tightens on the receiver. "What happened?" "There was a fire. She's gone, Gene. Mom's gone." The apartment goes silent. Gene stands there, holding the phone, unable to speak. His wife, Faye, is watching him from across the room. She can see his face changing. She can see something breaking behind his eyes. Anna Hackman was the only person who ever believed in Gene. His father had walked out when Gene was 13. His teachers had told him he'd never amount to anything. The Pasadena Playhouse had expelled him for having no talent. But his mother, Anna, had looked at him differently. She had seen something that nobody else could see. When Gene was 10 years old, Anna took him to the movies. They sat in the dark theater, watching the flickering images on the screen, and Gene felt something awaken inside him. The actors up there weren't pretending. They were becoming other people. They were living other lives. It was magic. After the movie ended, Anna turned to her son. "Gene," she said, "I want to see you up on that screen someday." Those words stayed with him, through the years of struggle, through the rejections, through the humiliations. Every time someone told Gene Hackman he couldn't make it, he heard his mother's voice in his head. "I want to see you up on that screen someday." Now she was gone, and she had never seen him on that screen. Gene flew to California for the funeral. He stood at the graveside in Montecito Memorial Park, watching them lower his mother into the ground. He thought about all the things he wanted to tell her, all the things he never said. He thought about the years he had spent in New York, chasing a dream that seemed further away than ever. He thought about how he had failed her. "She believed in me," Gene would later say. "She was the only one who did, and she died before I could prove her right." The years that followed were brutal. Gene returned to New York and kept auditioning. He kept getting rejected. He kept hearing the same words over and over. "You're not leading man material. You're a character actor. You don't have the right look." But something had changed inside him. His mother's death had given him a kind of desperate determination. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for her. He was fighting to prove that her belief in him had not been wasted. In 1964, Gene landed a role in Lilith, a psychological drama starring Warren Beatty. It wasn't a big role, but it was a real movie. A Hollywood movie. If his mother had lived 2 more years, she would have seen it. In 1967, Gene got his break. Warren Beatty remembered him from Lilith and cast him as Buck Barrow in Bonnie and Clyde. The performance was electric. The critics noticed. The Academy nominated Gene for Best Supporting Actor. Gene didn't win that night, but he stood in his rented tuxedo, watching the ceremony, and thought about his mother. She would have been 62 years old. She would have been so proud. The Oscar came 4 years later for The French Connection. Gene stood on stage at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, holding the golden statue, and said the words he had been waiting his entire life to say. "Thank you." But the person he most wanted to thank wasn't there. She had died in a fire 9 years earlier, in a small house in San Bernardino, before her son became a star. There was one film, though, one film that Gene wished his mother could have seen more than any other. It wasn't The French Connection, it wasn't Unforgiven. It was a quiet drama from 1970 called I Never Sang for My Father. Gene played a character named Gene Garrison, a college professor struggling with his relationship with his aging father. The film was about all the things that go unsaid between parents and children, all the love that gets trapped behind walls of pride and resentment, all the words that never get spoken until it's too late. The opening line of the film became famous. Death ends a life, but it does not end a relationship. Gene understood those words in a way that most actors couldn't. He had lived them. He was still living them, 20 years after his mother's death. In a 2011 interview with GQ magazine, Gene was asked which of his films he would most want to show his mother if she were still alive. He didn't hesitate. I never sang for my father, he said. I thought it was a sensitive picture about family and relationships, and I think she would have been proud and happy to see that. He paused. You're fortunate sometimes to be able to do something in life that defines who you are and who your parents may have wanted you to be. Roger Ebert reviewed the film when it came out. He wrote, "The effect is not of acting, but as if the story were happening right now while we see it. That's because for Gene Hackman, it was happening." Every scene with his on-screen father brought back memories of his real father, the man who had walked out when Gene was 13. Every scene about unspoken love reminded him of his mother, the woman who had believed in him and died before she could see him succeed. Gene was nominated for an Oscar for I Never Sang for My Father. He lost to John Mills in Ryan's Daughter. But the nomination didn't matter to him. What mattered was the film itself. What mattered was that he had made something his mother would have been proud of. Anna Hackman had told her 10-year-old son that she wanted to see him on that screen someday. She never got the chance. But Gene made sure that when he finally got there, he made something worthy of her belief in him. The fire that killed Anna Hackman was ruled an accident. She had been drinking. She fell asleep with a lit cigarette. The flames spread quickly through the small house. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. Gene rarely talked about his mother's death in interviews. It was too painful, too private. But the people who knew him understood that it shaped everything he did. His intensity, his dedication, his refusal to give up no matter how many times he was rejected. My mother and my grandmother were important, Gene told an interviewer when asked what his father had taught him. The question was about his father, but Gene's answer was about the women who raised him, the women who believed in him, the women who made him who he was. Anna Hackman died on December 30th, 1962. Her son was 32 years old, a struggling actor in New York City with nothing but a dream and a handful of rejections. 8 years later, Gene Hackman made I Never Sang for My Father. 9 years later, he won his first Oscar. 21 years later, he won his second. But he never stopped thinking about that small house in San Bernardino. He never stopped hearing his mother's voice. I want to see you up on that screen someday. He made it, Mom. He just wishes you had been there to see it. The title of the film says everything. I Never Sang for My Father. It's about all the things we don't say to the people we love, all the songs we never sing, all the words we keep locked inside until it's too late. Gene Hackman understood that title better than anyone. He had lived it with his father, who walked out when Gene was 13. He had lived it with his mother, who died before she could see him succeed. Death ends a life, the film says, but it does not end a relationship. Gene Hackman carried his relationship with his mother for 63 more years. He carried it through every role, every performance, every award. He carried it all the way to his death in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in February 2025. He was 95 years old. His mother had died when he was 32. That means Gene Hackman spent 63 years proving his mother right. 63 years becoming the actor she always knew he could be. 63 years living up to the words she spoke to him in that movie theater when he was 10 years old. "I want to see you up on that screen someday." She never saw it, but she was right. Gene Hackman became one of the greatest actors who ever lived. He won 2 Academy Awards. He appeared in over 80 films. He changed American cinema forever, and he did it for her. Every role, every performance, every award. For the woman who believed in him when no one else did. For the mother who died in a fire before she could see her son become a star. For Anna Hackman, who looked at a 10-year-old boy in a movie theater and said, "I want to see you up on that screen someday." She's up there with him now. Finally. After all these years, she can see him on that screen, and she's proud. There's something else Gene said in that GQ interview. Something that explains why "I Never Sang for My Father" meant so much to him. You're fortunate sometimes to be able to do something in life that defines who you are and who your parents may have wanted you to be. Those words carry the weight of 60 years of grief, 60 years of wondering what his mother would have thought, 60 years of performing for an audience of one who would never see him. Gene Hackman didn't make movies for the critics. He didn't make them for the awards. He made them for the woman who sat next to him in that dark theater in 1940 and told him he could be something. The irony is devastating. Anna Hackman was the one who encouraged Gene to pursue acting. She was the one who saw the potential that no one else could see. And when she died, Gene had accomplished almost nothing. One small role in a forgotten film, a handful of off-Broadway plays. A career that looked like it was going nowhere. If Anna had lived just 5 more years, she would have seen Bonnie and Clyde. She would have seen her son nominated for an Academy Award. She would have known that her belief in him was justified. But she didn't live 5 more years. She died in a fire, alone, in a small house in California, while her son was 3,000 miles away, still struggling. That's the cruelest part of this story. Not the fire, not the death, the timing. Anna Hackman died at the exact moment when everything was about to change. She died believing in a son who had not yet proven himself. She died with nothing but faith, and Gene spent the rest of his life trying to honor that faith. In 1970, when Gene made "I Never Sang for My Father," he was 40 years old. His mother had been dead for 8 years. His career had finally taken off. He had money, fame, respect. Everything he had dreamed about when he was sleeping on friends' couches and working as a doorman. But none of it mattered as much as making that one film. "I Never Sang for My Father" is about a man who loves his father, but can never tell him. It's about all the words that get trapped inside us, all the songs we never sing, all the relationships that end before they're finished. Gene played Gene Garrison. The character's name was the same as his own. That wasn't a coincidence. The film was personal in a way that very few films ever are. Melvyn Douglas played the father. He and Gene had a difficult relationship off-screen. Douglas had wanted another actor for the role, and Gene never found out who. He used that estrangement, that tension, to fuel his performance. The result was something extraordinary. Roger Ebert called it one of the most emotionally honest films he had ever seen. The Academy nominated both Gene and Douglas for Oscars. Neither won, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Gene had finally made something his mother would have understood. Something about family. something about love, something about all the things we fail to say before it's too late. Death ends a life, the film says, but it does not end a relationship. Gene Hackman proved that statement true. His relationship with his mother didn't end when she died. It continued for 63 more years. It shaped every choice he made, every role he took, every performance he gave. When Gene retired from acting in 2004, he moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He wrote novels. He avoided Hollywood. He lived quietly, far from the spotlight, but in his home, somewhere private, there was probably a photograph of Anna Hackman, the woman who looked at a 10-year-old boy and saw a movie star, the woman who died before she could see him become one. I want to see you up on that screen someday. She never did, but he made sure it was worth seeing. That's the real legacy of Gene Hackman, not the Oscars, not the famous roles, not the legendary career. The real legacy is a promise kept to a woman who died in a fire 63 years before her son followed her. I want to see you up on that screen someday. He got there, Mom. He got there. And everything he did for you.